So we have to remember the components of aggregate demand, right? Aggregate demand is equal to Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus NX. Consumption plus investment plus government spending plus our spending on exports minus our spending on imports. So anytime, right? So we can kind of, do a little chart here, right? And we can say, factor, and then we could do change, and then we could do the impact on aggregate demand. But it's really simple. It's just a direct relationship, right? So if the consumption increases, the aggregate demand increases, right? If the consumption decreases, the aggregate demand decreases. Vice versa. The investment increases, aggregate demand increases. Government spending increases, so on and so forth, right? Gets a little bit more complicated when we get to exports and imports, right? Because if we unpack this is X minus M. So then we do have one thing that's included here inversely, right? So yes, as X increases, the aggregate demand shifts outwards. But as M increases, your aggregate demand is going to do the opposite and is going to shift inwards. So, and again, same kind of convention as before, where aggregate demand, this is an outward shift or an increase. So that is aggregate demand increasing. Looks like that, with my price level and my real GDP on my axis there. Right? Compared to if I had aggregate demand decreasing, it'd be something like this. Again, should be, pretty standard convention from regular supply and demand, but just wanted to clarify what we're all saying. So some of the other things that will impact demand are consumer confidence. Increases in consumer confidence will lead to increases in aggregate demand now. So increases in consumer confidence, which is really just expectations about the future, right? Which makes sense. That was one of our demand determinants when we just talked about regular supply and demand, right? We talked about how, if you expect the price of gas to, go up tomorrow, what are you going to do? You're going to buy it right now, right? So similar thing with consumer confidence. If the consumers are confident that the economy is doing well and they're going to have a job, they're going to go and spend their money. But if they're freaking out, like, the pandemic days of COVID, right? Everybody, only bought the bare necessities, and that was because consumer confidence was low, and as a result, aggregate demand shrunk. Similar reasons, right? Exact same kind of reasons we've got for business investment, right? If there's an increase in business confidence, then that means that firms are going to spend more on investment. They're going to believe that the future payoff is going to be substantial. And obviously, conversely, if either one of these things drops, then consumption and investment spending declines. And so just for completeness, let's go do a graph talking about, let's talk about a decline in consumer confidence. Price level, real GDP, green, demand curve, red, short run supply curve, rainbow, long run average, long run aggregate supply curve. Equilibrium is right here. P0. This is Y, or sorry, not P0. Well, yeah, let's choose 0 this time. We can do 0. That's totally fine. We'll call this AD0. And so again, let's say, we were modeling what happened during the pandemic. There was a decrease in consumer and business confidence. This manifested itself in a decrease in consumption and investment activity. And we can see that graphically by shifting our aggregate demand curve inwards, AD1, and finding that we've got prices that are depressed and we have output that's depressed, right? Which is that dreaded stagflation. Yeah.
Does this mean that inflation during the pandemic was actually worse than what we even saw because price levels are depressed by demand going down?
Like, were inflationary pressures even worse than what we saw because demand was suppressed? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And part of that had to do with the fact that, there were real logistical supply chain issues, right? With people not being able to go to work or people getting quarantined at docks and stuff like that. Again, there's a really interesting podcast. I'll shoot it out to you guys talking about how the price of cargo containers shot up to like $10,000 for a cargo container. So things that just were like a no nonsense, like easy win to like import into the United States and sell, all of a sudden became really expensive. And so that's part of the reason why you weren't seeing things on the shelves as much, is because it was literally, it was just physically difficult to get things through the supply chain because of the, like I said, the real physical implications or ramifications of the virus and the global pandemic.